Abigail Nolan's fingers trembled as she placed her gold wedding band on the counter of Wilbur's general store. The last physical reminder of a marriage cut tragically short when influenza took her husband just 3 months ago in the cruel winter of 1871. "I'll take whatever food this will buy, Mr. Wilbur," she said, her voice barely above a whisper as hunger gnawed at her empty stomach. "This ain't much, Mrs. Nolan," the shopkeeper said, examining the simple band with critical eyes. "Gold's thin. Won't fetch more than a few days' worth of beans and flour." Nora Landon hadn't always known such desperate times. 6 months ago, she'd been a respectable schoolteacher's wife in Boston, but James had convinced her that opportunity awaited in the West. He'd been filled with dreams of starting a small ranch outside the growing town of Clearwater, Colorado. Those dreams had died with him, leaving her alone in a half-built cabin with winter's chill still lingering in the April air, and not a penny to her name. "Please," she whispered, pushing the ring closer to the shopkeeper. "It's all I have left." A deep voice from behind her cut through the quiet store. "She'll keep the ring." Nora turned to find herself facing the tallest man she'd ever seen. His broad shoulders nearly filled the doorway, and despite the warmth of the spring day, he wore a long duster that reached down to his spurred boots. His face, partially shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, bore the weathered lines of a man who'd spent years under the harsh western sun. "This ain't your business, Preston," the shopkeeper said with a scowl. "I'm making it my business." The cowboy Preston Sutherland apparently stepped forward and placed several coins on the counter. "Give the lady enough supplies for 2 weeks. Put it on my account." Nora felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. "I don't accept charity, sir." Those eyes, blue as a mountain lake, finally looked directly at her. "It's not charity, madam. It's an advance. I've got work that needs doing at my ranch, and I hear you're handy with figures and letters." He picked up her ring and pressed it back into her palm, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. "Keep it. You'll need it again someday." His words struck her like a physical blow. Need it again. The very thought was inconceivable. James was gone, and with him had gone any hope of happiness. "I don't understand," she said, clutching the ring tightly. "My ranch hands can hardly write their own names, let alone keep proper accounts. Word is you were a school teacher back east. I need someone with education to help organize my affairs." Preston's expression remained impassive. "The pay's fair, and you'll have a roof over your head. Better than selling off memories for beans." Nora hesitated. Pride demanded she refuse, but practicality whispered that she'd be dead from starvation within weeks if she didn't find work soon. The neighboring homesteaders had their own troubles and mouths to feed. They couldn't be expected to support a widow indefinitely. "What sort of arrangements?" she asked cautiously. "My housekeeper, Mrs. Timmons, has a room above the kitchen. You'd have your privacy. 6 days a week, sunup to sundown, with Sundays for yourself. $5 a week plus room and board." It was more money than she'd ever earned on her own. $5 would buy food for a month. In a year, she might save enough to return east, perhaps to her cousin in Philadelphia. "When would you expect me to start?" Nora asked, her mind already calculating how long her current supplies would last. "Today, if you're willing. My wagon's outside." He gestured toward the door. "I can take you to gather your things, then to the ranch. It's about 10 miles east." The Rocking S Ranch. She'd heard of it. One of the largest cattle operations in the territory, owned by Preston Sutherland, a man rumored to be as hard and unforgiving as the land he'd tamed. Nora looked around the store, aware of the curious eyes watching this exchange. Her life had come to this, accepting work from a stranger because the alternative was starvation. James would be heartbroken to see how low his ambitions had brought her. Very well, Mr. Sutherland. I accept your offer. An hour later, Nora sat beside Preston on the wagon bench, her few possessions stowed in the back. They'd stopped at her cabin, little more than a one-room shack with a partially completed addition that James had been working on when illness struck. She'd packed her clothes, her books, and the photograph of her wedding day, her eyes dry as she closed the door on what should have been her future. "We'll send someone to check on your property now and then," Preston said, his eyes fixed on the trail ahead. "Lot of desperate men passing through these parts. Wouldn't want squatters taking what's rightfully yours." "There's nothing worth taking," she replied, "but thank you for the consideration." They traveled in silence after that, the rhythmic creaking of the wagon wheels providing a melancholy soundtrack to Nora's thoughts. The landscape stretched out around them, vast and intimidating, so different from the crowded streets of Boston. Mountains rose in the distance, their snow-capped peaks gleaming in the afternoon sun. Closer at hand, the land rolled in gentle waves of new spring grass, dotted with wildflowers that had emerged with the warming weather. "It's beautiful country," Preston said suddenly, as if reading her thoughts. "Harsh, but beautiful. Takes a special kind of person to make a life here." "My husband thought so," Nora replied, her fingers instinctively touching the wedding ring now hanging from a thin chain around her neck. "He had such plans." Preston nodded but offered no empty condolences, for which Nora was grateful. She'd had enough pitying looks to last a lifetime. The rocking S came into view as they crested a rise in the trail. Unlike her humble cabin, this was a proper ranch, a large two-story house built of solid timber, a big barn, bunkhouse, corrals, and various outbuildings. Cattle grazed in the distance, and several cowboys on horseback moved among them. "Home," Preston said simply. "Mrs. Timmons proved to be a formidable woman in her 60s, with iron-gray hair pulled into a severe bun, and a no-nonsense manner that Nora found oddly comforting. She showed Nora to a small but clean room above the kitchen, with a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a small table that would serve as a desk. "Breakfast at 5, dinner at noon, supper at 6, Mrs. Timmons informed her. "Mr. Sutherland likes punctuality. You'll find his office off the main parlor. He says you're to start tomorrow morning, so I suggest you rest today and get your bearings." Left alone, Nora sat on the edge of the bed and allowed herself a moment of uncertainty. What did she know about ranch accounts or business matters? James had handled all their finances as was proper. She was educated, yes, but her experience was limited to teaching children their letters and sums. A knock at her door startled her from these thoughts. Opening it, she found Preston standing there, his hat in his hands. "Mrs. Timmons get you settled?" he asked. "Yes, thank you. The room is quite comfortable," he nodded. "Good. I realize I've thrown you into this situation with little explanation. The truth is, my previous bookkeeper left rather suddenly 2 weeks ago and my affairs are in some disarray. I need someone I can trust to put things right." "And you trust me?" Nora asked, surprised. "You don't even know me." A faint smile touched his lips. "I know enough. When a woman would rather sell her wedding ring than ask for charity, it speaks to her character." He gestured toward the stairs. "If you're feeling up to it, I'd like to show you the office and explain what needs doing." The office was a wood-paneled room lined with bookshelves and dominated by a large oak desk covered in ledgers and papers. A smaller desk had been placed near the window, presumably for her use. "It's a mess, I know," Preston said, running a hand through his dark hair. "Jackson, my former bookkeeper, had his own system. Unfortunately, it's one only he understood." Nora approached the main desk, scanning the open ledgers. Even at a glance, she could see inconsistencies and errors in the columns of figures. "Mr. Sutherland," she said carefully, "may I ask why your bookkeeper left?" Preston's expression darkened. "He helped himself to funds that weren't his. When I confronted him, he fled. I suspect he's halfway to California by now." "I see." Nora bit her lip. "And you're not concerned that I might do the same, would you?" "No, of course not." "Then we understand each other." He moved to stand beside her, his tall frame casting a shadow across the papers. "I need these accounts put in order. I need to know exactly how much Jackson took. And I need a system that's clear enough that I can follow it myself if necessary." Nora nodded, already organizing the task in her mind. "I'll need to go through everything from the beginning. It may take some time." "You have it. Just be thorough." He turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. The men don't need to know the details of why you're here. As far as they're concerned, you're simply helping with the books because you have the education for it." "I understand." Preston gave her a measuring look. "Do you? The West isn't like the East, Mrs. Landon. A woman alone is vulnerable. Being under my roof offers protection, but it also invites speculation. The men will respect you as my employee, but town gossips may be less kind." "I've faced gossip before, Mr. Sutherland. It doesn't concern me." This wasn't entirely true, but Nora had more pressing worries than what people might say about her working for an unmarried rancher. Preston nodded. "Good. We'll begin tomorrow morning then." The days settled into a routine. Nora would rise with the dawn, break her fast with Mrs. Timmons in the kitchen, and then spend the day in Preston's office, unraveling the tangled accounts. The work was challenging but satisfying, drawing on her organizational skills and attention to detail. By the end of her first week, she'd created a new ledger system and begun the painstaking process of verifying every transaction from the past 6 months. Preston himself was often absent during the day, riding out with his men to check on cattle or handle the myriad tasks involved in running such a large operation. But in the evenings, he would join her in the office, listening attentively as she explained her progress and asking thoughtful questions that revealed a sharp mind behind his taciturn exterior. "You've accomplished more in a week than Jackson did in a month," he remarked one evening as they reviewed her work. "I'm impressed." "There's still much to do," Nora replied, trying not to show how his praise warmed her. "But I believe your former bookkeeper took approximately $300 over the course of 4 months. He was clever about its small amounts, easily overlooked if one wasn't paying close attention." Preston's jaw tightened. $300. That's more than I pay a good cowhand in a year." "I'm sorry," Nora said quietly. "I know that must be difficult to hear." He shook his head. "It's not the money so much as the betrayal. I trusted Jackson." His blue eyes met hers. "Trust isn't something I give easily, Mrs. Landon." "Perhaps that's wise in this country. Perhaps." He stood and moved to the window, looking out at the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "You've been here a week now. How do you find ranch life?" Nora considered her answer. "Different from what I expected. Busier. There always seems to be something happening, cattle being moved, supplies coming in, men coming and going. It's a small kingdom in its way," Preston said, still gazing outward. "Self-sufficient when it needs to be. When winter closes the passes and town is inaccessible, we survive on what we've stored and prepared." "Your men seem very loyal," Nora observed. She'd watched them from her window, noting the respect with which they treated Preston and the easy camaraderie they shared among themselves. "They're good men, most of them. Some have troubled pasts, but out here it's what a man does, not what he's done, that matters." He turned back to her. "And you? Do you find yourself missing the comforts of Boston?" "Sometimes," Nora admitted, "but Boston holds painful memories now. My parents died within months of each other 2 years ago. Then I met James at a literary society meeting. He was so full of dreams, so convinced that the West held our future. She touched the ring that still hung around her neck. I suppose I wanted to believe in something again. Preston's expression softened. Dreams aren't foolish, Mrs. Landon, even when they don't turn out as we hope. Please call me Nora, she said suddenly. Mrs. Landon sounds so formal when we work together daily. A brief smile touched his lips. Nora, then, and I'm Preston to my friends. Are we friends, Mr. Sutherland? The question slipped out before she could consider its propriety. I believe we could be, he replied, his voice low, if you're willing. Something in his tone made her heart beat faster. She turned her attention back to the ledgers, afraid her face might betray the sudden confusion of feelings his words had stirred. We should finish reviewing these figures, she said, her voice deliberately steady. It's getting late. Preston returned to his chair, but Nora felt his gaze on her more than once as they worked through the remaining accounts. When they finally finished for the evening, he walked her to the foot of the back stairs that led to her room. Thank you for your diligence, Nora, he said. You've brought order to chaos, and I'm grateful. It's why you hired me, she replied, uncomfortable with his gratitude. I'm simply doing my job. Nevertheless. He hesitated, then added, Sunday is your day off. I'm riding into town for supplies. You're welcome to accompany me if you'd like a change of scenery. The offer was tempting. Aside from her daily walks around the ranch yard, Nora had been confined to the house for a week. That would be lovely, thank you. Good, we'll leave after breakfast. He gave her a slight bow. Sleep well. As promised, they set out for Clearwater the next morning, the wagon loaded with empty barrels and crates to be filled with supplies. The town was small but growing, with a main street lined with businesses: the general store, a saloon, a small hotel, a blacksmith shop, and various other establishments catering to the needs of ranchers and travelers. Preston helped Nora down from the wagon in front of Wilbur's store, the same place where they'd first met. I have business at the bank, he told her. Take your time. Buy whatever you need for yourself, it's on my account. Nora started to protest, but he silenced her with a raised hand. Consider it an advance on your next week's wages if your pride won't allow you to accept it as a gift. Thank you, she said, touched by his understanding. I won't abuse your generosity. Inside the store, Nora selected a few personal items: soap, hairpins, a notebook, and pencils. As she browsed, she became aware of whispers and glances from other customers, particularly a group of women examining fabric bolts. Living under his roof, bold as you please. Not even a proper mourning period for her husband. Always knew those Eastern women had loose morals. Nora's cheeks burned, but she kept her head high, refusing to acknowledge the gossip. She was completing her purchases when Preston entered the store. The whispers immediately ceased. Ready? He asked, seemingly oblivious to the tension in the air. Yes, thank you. Nora gathered her small parcel and followed him outside, conscious of the eyes tracking their every movement. Ignore them, Preston said quietly once they were on the boardwalk. Small towns run on gossip. It will pass when something more interesting comes along. You heard. I heard enough. His jaw was tight. I should have warned you it would be like this. You did warn me, Nora reminded him. And as I told you then, I've faced gossip before. It's of no consequence. Preston looked down at her, his expression unreadable. You're a remarkable woman, Nora Landon. Before she could respond, a shout from down the street drew their attention. A man was stumbling out of the saloon, clearly drunk despite the early hour. He caught sight of them and lurched in their direction. Sutherland, he bellowed. You owe me, you bastard. Preston stepped slightly in front of Nora, his body tense. Go back inside the store, he said quietly. Who is that? She asked, not moving. Jackson. Nora's eyes widened as she recognized the name of Preston's former bookkeeper. The man was disheveled, his clothes dirty and torn, his face unshaven. He staggered closer, one hand clutching a bottle, the other hovering near his waist where Nora glimpsed the butt of a pistol. "You fired me," Jackson shouted. "Accused me of stealing, ruined my reputation." "You stole from me," Preston replied, his voice level but carrying. $300 to be exact. We both know it's true." Jackson's face contorted with rage. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, he can," Nora said, stepping forward despite Preston's attempt to keep her behind him. "I've spent the past week reconstructing the accounts. The evidence is quite clear." Jackson's bloodshot eyes fixed on her. "Who the hell are you?" "Mrs. Landon is my new bookkeeper," Preston said, "and she's considerably more competent than you ever were." With a roar of fury, Jackson reached for his gun. Preston shoved Nora aside and lunged forward, catching the man's wrist before he could draw. They grappled briefly before Preston landed a solid punch that sent Jackson sprawling in the dirt. By now, a crowd had gathered, and the sheriff emerged from his office across the street. "What's all this commotion?" "Jackson here was just leaving town," Preston said, straightening his coat. "Permanently. Unless he'd prefer to face charges of embezzlement and attempted murder." The sheriff looked from Preston to the fallen man. "That true, Jackson? You trying to shoot a man in my town?" Jackson struggled to his feet, wiping blood from his mouth. "This ain't over, Sutherland. You'll regret crossing me." "Get him on the next stage out of town," Preston told the sheriff. "I don't want to see his face again." As the sheriff led the still cursing Jackson away, Preston turned to Nora. "Are you all right?" She nodded, though her heart was racing from the encounter. "He might have killed you." "He wasn't fast enough," Preston said with a grim smile. "And now everyone knows exactly what kind of man he is." He offered her his arm. "Come, let's finish our business and head back to the ranch. I think we've provided enough entertainment for one day." The ride back to the Rocking S was quiet, both of them lost in thought after the confrontation in town. Nora found herself studying Preston's profile as he handled the reins, seeing him with new eyes. He'd placed himself in danger to protect her, without hesitation or fear. "Thank you," she said finally, breaking the silence, "for defending me today." Preston glanced at her. "I would have done the same for anyone in my employ. Perhaps, but I'm still grateful." They lapsed into silence again, but it was a companionable one. As they approached the ranch, the setting sun bathed the buildings in golden light, making the place look almost magical. "It's beautiful," Nora murmured. Preston nodded. "It is. I came here 15 years ago with nothing but the clothes on my back and a few dollars in my pocket. Worked as a hand on old man Simmons' place until I'd saved enough to buy my first few acres. When he died without heirs, I purchased the rest from his estate." "You've built something remarkable," Nora said, genuinely impressed by what he'd accomplished. "It's been my life's work." He flicked the reins lightly. "What about you? What were your dreams before?" "Before James died," Nora sighed. "I wanted a family, children, a home filled with love and learning." She touched her wedding ring through her dress. "Simple dreams, I suppose." "The best dreams often are," Preston replied softly. Over the next weeks, Nora settled more comfortably into life at the Rocking S. With the accounts now in order, Preston asked her to take on additional responsibilities corresponding with cattle buyers, ordering supplies, even maintaining the ranch's small library. She found herself enjoying the work and, more surprisingly, enjoying Preston's company. He was unlike any man she'd known before, straightforward in his speech, unapologetic in his decisions, yet possessed of an unexpected gentleness. She'd seen him carry a newborn calf in his arms during a spring storm, speaking to it in soothing tones as he brought it to shelter. She'd watched him patiently teach a young ranch hand to read during evening hours, never showing frustration at the boy's slow progress. And she'd begun to notice other things about him, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, how his voice softened when he spoke to her, the breadth of his shoulders when he removed his coat in the warm office. These thoughts troubled her. James had been dead just 4 months. To even consider another man seemed disloyal to his memory, yet Nora couldn't deny the growing attraction she felt toward Preston. It was improper, inappropriate, and completely beyond her control. One evening in late May, Nora was working later than usual, finalizing a cattle sale contract that needed to go out with the morning mail. Preston entered the office, returning from a day spent mending fences on the North Range. "You should rest," he said, noticing her tired eyes. "The contract can wait until tomorrow." "I'm nearly finished," Nora replied, suppressing a yawn, "and it needs to go out with the morning stage." Preston crossed to her desk and gently took the pen from her hand. "Enough, you've been working since dawn." His fingers brushed hers, and Nora felt that now familiar flutter in her chest. She stood hastily, needing distance from his disturbing presence. "Perhaps you're right. I should retire for the night." "Wait." Preston moved between her and the door. "There's something I've been meaning to discuss with you." Nora's heartbeat quickened. "Yes, your position here." He paced to the window and back, uncharacteristically hesitant. "The accounts are in order now. The systems you've put in place are clear and effective." A cold weight settled in Nora's stomach. "Are you saying you no longer require my services?" "No." Preston looked startled. "Quite the opposite. I want to offer you a permanent position. A fair salary, your own quarters in the main house rather than above the kitchen. Complete responsibility for the business affairs of the ranch." Relief washed over Nora, followed quickly by uncertainty. "That's very generous, but you don't see your future here," Preston finished for her, his expression closing off. "I understand. You mentioned returning east eventually. It's not that." Nora twisted her hands together, searching for words. "I've come to care for this place more than I expected, but my situation is complicated." "Because you're a widow." Preston stepped closer. "Because of what people might say." "Partly." Nora lifted her chin. "And partly because I'm not certain what I want anymore. When James died, I thought my future died with him. Now, I find myself considering possibilities I never imagined." Preston's eyes darkened. "What possibilities, Nora?" She couldn't answer, couldn't find words for the confusing emotions swirling within her. Instead, she moved toward the door. "I should go. It's late." His hand caught her arm, his touch gentle but insistent. "Don't run from this conversation." "I'm not running," Nora protested, though in truth she was desperate to escape the intensity of his gaze. "I'm simply tired and not thinking clearly." "Look at me," Preston said softly. When she did, he continued, "I didn't just offer you a job, I'm offering you a home, a place where you belong." "With you?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. "Yes." His hand moved to cup her cheek. "With me, if that's what you want." Nora closed her eyes, torn between desire and duty. "It's too soon." "James would want you to be happy," Preston finished. "To live, not just survive." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "I've watched you these past weeks, seen your strength, your intelligence, your kindness. I wasn't looking for this, Nora, but I can't deny what I feel." "And what do you feel?" she whispered, needing to hear him say it. "I love you." The words hung in the air between them, simple and profound. "I want you by my side, not just as my bookkeeper, but as my partner, my wife." Nora's eyes flew open. "Wife, Preston, we barely know each other." "I know enough." His gaze held hers, unwavering. "I know you're the woman I want to build a future with. The rest we can discover together." He leaned down, his intention clear, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Nora knew she should. Propriety, decency, respect for her late husband all demanded she step back. Instead, she found herself rising on her toes, meeting him halfway as his lips found hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but quickly deepened as months of unacknowledged attraction flared between them. Preston's arms encircled her waist, drawing her against his chest. Nora's hands found their way to his shoulders, feeling the solid strength of him beneath her fingers. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Nora felt as though her world had shifted on its axis. Nothing would ever be the same after this moment. "I shouldn't have done that," she said, though she made no move to leave his embrace. "Regrets already?" Preston asked, his voice husky. "No," Nora admitted. "And that's what frightens me. I should feel guilty, but I don't, not when I'm with you." Preston's smile was tender. "Perhaps that's your answer then." He was right, Nora realized. For the first time since James's death, she felt alive again, not just existing, but truly living with hopes and dreams for the future. A future that somehow had come to include Preston Sutherland. "I need time," she said. "Not to decide if I care for you, I know I do. But to make peace with my past before I can fully embrace a future with you." Preston nodded, releasing her but keeping hold of her hands. "I understand. I've waited this long to find you, Nora Landon. I can wait a little longer." He lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm, then stepped back, giving her the space she needed. "Good night. Sleep well." Nora retreated to her room, her mind and heart in turmoil. She sat on the edge of her bed and removed the chain from around her neck, looking at the wedding ring that had once symbolized her future with James. Memories flooded back their wedding day, the journey west, the brief happiness they'd shared before illness claimed him. "What would you want from me, James?" she whispered to the empty room. "Would you understand that my heart has room for new love, even as I honor what we shared?" There was no answer, of course, but as Nora clutched the ring in her palm, she felt a sense of peace slowly settling over her. James had loved life, had embraced every new adventure with enthusiasm. He wouldn't want her to live in the shadow of grief forever. The next morning, Nora rose early and walked out to watch the sunrise over the eastern pastures. The air was cool and fresh, filled with the promise of a new day. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to find Preston approaching, 2 steaming cups in his hands. "Coffee," he offered, extending one to her. "Thank you." She accepted the cup, warming her hands around it. "It's beautiful here at this hour." "My favorite time of day," Preston agreed, standing beside her to watch the golden light spreading across his land. "Everything seems possible when the sun rises." Nora took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about your offer." Preston turned to face her, his expression carefully neutral. "And I've spent months believing my future died with James. But being here, working with you, I've realized that life continues, even after loss." She reached into her pocket and withdrew her wedding ring, now removed from its chain. "This ring will always represent an important chapter of my life. But it's time to begin a new one." She extended the ring on her open palm. "You told me I'd need this again someday. You were right, though not in the way either of us expected then." Understanding dawned in Preston's eyes. "Nora, are you saying?" "I'm saying yes," she said simply. "Yes to staying at the Rocking S. Yes to building a future here. Yes to becoming your wife if that's still what you want." Preston's face transformed with a joy so pure it took her breath away. He set his coffee cup on a fence post and took her hands in his. "I want nothing more." He took the ring from her palm, studying it for a moment. "This was James's promise to you. I'll honor that by making my own." Reaching into his vest pocket, he withdrew a simple gold band. "I bought this in town yesterday, hoping but not daring to believe you might accept it." Nora's eyes filled with tears as Preston slipped his ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly as though made for her. "It's beautiful," she whispered, like its wearer. Preston drew her into his arms. "I love you, Nora Landon. And I promise to spend every day making sure you never regret giving me your heart." "I love you too," Nora said, the words feeling right, feeling true. "And I promise to cherish this second chance we've been given." Their lips met as the sun cleared the horizon, bathing them in golden light. A new day, a new beginning, a love born from kindness when one person reached out to another in their darkest hour. Nora knew there would be challenges ahead. The gossips in town would have much to say about their courtship. There would be times when memories of James would bring sadness. Building a life together would require work and patience and compromise. But as Preston held her close, his heartbeat steady against her cheek, Nora felt certain of one thing: this was where she belonged. Not because fate or circumstance had brought her here, but because she had chosen this path, this man, this future. And in that choice lay true freedom. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn day, Nora became Mrs. Preston Sutherland in a simple ceremony at the Rocking S, surrounded by ranch hands and the few friends they'd made in town. Her first wedding ring rested in a small box among her treasured possessions, a reminder of the love she'd found and lost. Her second wedding ring gleamed on her finger, a symbol of the love she'd found again, against all odds, in the vast wilderness of the West. And as Preston kissed his bride beneath an arch of golden leaves, Nora knew with absolute certainty that some endings are merely beginnings in disguise, and that the heart's capacity for love is as boundless as the Colorado sky stretching above them.